we got to know them because we would spend time either playing football together or watching football together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was watching one of those late night Champions League matches where the match obviously was very boring because we started talking about the legal side of football.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of luck. I think I'll just put it that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the places I applied for internships, at that point, all you had was sports management companies.
Yeah.
So I worked with two or three. I had the opportunity to even intern at that point with the person who was Sachin Tendulkar's manager.
Mm-hmm. Hello everyone, welcome to the Sports Sausage podcast. My name is Tushar Katheria. I'll be the host for today's episode. This is the second season, and for the 11th episode, we have our guest Roshan Gopalakrishna, who is a partner in the LawNK. Roshan is graduated from the NLSIU Bangalore, which is one of the top national law universities of India, and he is one of the people who are working with three different organizations. First is the GoSports Foundation, second is the Sports Law Policy Center, and third is the Sports and Society Accelerator. So let's start a podcast now. This episode, we have our guest Roshan Gopalakrishna, who is a partner in the LawNK, and yeah, one of my mentor who helped me out into the paper which I was writing when I was pursuing my LLM from the University of London. So Roshan, first of all, thank you so much for coming on board for the second season of our Sports Sausage podcast. And first of all, how are you right now?
Thank you, Tushar. I think glad to be on your show. And you're being far too kind when you said I mentored you for your article. I think I just provided very basic inputs and it was all your effort.
Yeah.
But it was great to, I think, speak to you last year and finally meet you in person at our symposium this year.
Yeah, definitely. And the symposium, if people who do not come to the symposium this year, try to come the next year. It's one of the best event where you can have a networking event, which I really love about it. We will talk about it later. So yeah, the first question would be that how your journey started from school and how you went into the law school and how that process started during after the 10th and 12th, how that started going.
So I think the journey had many steps to it and many different parts to it. I was born in this small town in coastal Karnataka called Karwar, which is now perhaps India's most important naval base. The aim I think behind setting up a naval base there was that in the 80s they thought Pakistani missiles could not reach Karwar.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, by the time the project was completed, technology had changed.
yeah,
But I think having the base also has helped the town grow in its own way. Otherwise, it's a town that actually is very famous for its association also with Rabindranath Tagore. So Tagore's brother was posted
mm-hmm.
there as a judge in the later part of the 19th century, and we have a beach and the town hall all named after Tagore.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unusual, I think, to find it in a small town in South India.
Yeah.
And so growing up in Karwar was great. I spent uh, the first 5 years of my life there, and then as my dad progressed the civil services, he also got transferred a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved throughout the state. So we used to, I think, change the school on average every 18 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And that continued. But it took us across the state. That's not an experience that you can really put a value on because there were parts of Karnataka which, I just read about in textbooks and then you and go and end up living there and you realize that, what you know is actually
Yeah.
not enough and there's so much more out there. But I think the aim for the longest time was to try and emulate my dad and join the civil services. It's a aim that gave way to other things over the course of life. But that was also the inspiration behind the joining NLS. And I think that's what took me there. It took a couple of attempts to get there, but the aim was to join and then to appear for the UPSC exams once I graduated. But as I said, that dream didn't last beyond the first 2 or 3 years of college.
Yeah.
There was a fair bit of course correction, but also down to the experiences you had in
Mhm,
college, and you realize that there's
mhm.
a broader worldview that you perhaps need to take and see how your life fits into that worldview.
Yeah. So yeah, lovely to hear about it and how your transition happened. And then you graduated from the NLSIU, one of the top national law university of India. It's the top. So how you ended up into the sports legal industry way back in that time when the sports in India, sport just booming at that time, because we have that cricket and the World Cup happened 2011, and during that time only you get working in sports legal sector. So how that transition happened for you? And then I think you work with the Nandan Kamath also, which is one of the pioneers in the right now in India in terms of the sports law.
So I think it was a lot of chance as well. So while
Mhm.
I had an interest in sport and I tried to play sport to some degree of proficiency, I wasn't the best athlete around. But I had an interest. I think obviously if you're a football fan, there's enough football around the year to keep you going. And you read about transfers and many other things. And I was a Man United fan. And then I remember in 2003 just reading about how this Russian billionaire had just bought Chelsea.
Yeah.
And you could never realize, or understand the type of impact that that kind of event really has on your life as a football fan, but also as a professional. And NLS at that point used to have a chair in European Union law,
Yeah.
which often meant that many young European academicians would come and teach for 6 months or 9 months in the course of the year.
Mhm.
And obviously, we got to know them because we would spend time either playing football together or watching football together.
Mhm.
I think it was watching one of those late night Champions League matches where the match obviously was very boring because we started talking about the legal side of football.
Mhm.
Uh, and talking about the Bosman judgment and the European Court of Justice involvement in looking at the competition law aspects of sport and the actions of sporting bodies. And one of my seniors, I think, actually had a fair bit of research material with him, which
Mhm.
he gave to me on a floppy disk and said, here about 100 articles for you to read from Westlaw.
Mhm.
So obviously, I didn't understand much, but I think you got to understand that there's stuff that you can do with sport and law.
Mhm.
And after a point, I think also it kind of helped you make sense of just the course that you were doing.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you were just studying plain vanilla law subjects, right? You
Mhm.
needed something to, I think, try and make the course interesting. And also going through a fair bit of personal turmoil at that point of time. So this is something that kept me anchored. And the professors were kind enough to actually, when I requested them, they said, yeah, you can work on a topic related to sport. I think they were also bored of just reading
Mhm.
the normal project topics, right? Which they've probably been allocating for 10 years and
Mhm.
they've seen the same project across many different years.
Yeah.
So topics like intellectual property, where I worked on ambush marketing, or alternate dispute resolution, where I worked on the court of arbitration for sport, just things like that. I think there was a lot of luck. I think I'll just put it that way as well.
Mhm.
Even to the places I applied for internships, so at that point, all you had was sports management companies.
Yeah.
So I worked with two or three. I had the opportunity to even intern at that point with the person who was Sachin Tendulkar's manager.
Mhm.
So quite an eye opener, because that was, I think, the first time that I'd seen a company that was actually centered around one athlete, in
Yeah.
fact, and not, but still being very financially stable and actually kind of picking the projects that they wanted Sachin to be involved in and the kind of endorsements that he should actually be part of, and the premium that they would put on quality. Right, he wasn't endorsing anything that came his way. It had to
Mhm.
be premium brands, and so that was, I think, that was great. Obviously, in 2000, there's also a period when I think India saw a few franchise-based leagues. There was the
Yeah.
Premier Hockey League,
Yeah.
which I think I sorely missed to this day because the Bangalore team did really well in the few
Yeah.
seasons of the Premier Hockey League. I still have a jersey from the Bangalore High Flyers.
Mhm.
And Arjun Halappa, who was at our symposium, was actually the captain of the team.
Yeah.
So when I met him, I actually told him he was very shocked that someone had a Bangalore Lions jersey.
Mhm.
And I think there was the ICL as well, which came with a very unique broadcasting model. There was the entire Supreme Court judgment around the
Mhm.
BCCI estate. All of which, showed you that there was something happening in Indian sport. You just didn't know what. Obviously, the BCCI and Nike deal had just been stuck.
Yeah.
BCCI suddenly became a really rich, and also the deal with Nimbus. So it suddenly became one of the world's richest sports governing bodies.
Yeah.
And with the IPL, I think the opportunities were there.
Mhm.
So I got lucky when I moved back to Bangalore, and I spoke to Nandan, who was my senior in college and an
Mhm.
absolute legend in college, of course. And he was just starting his firm. He was looking for his first associate, and we had a gentleman's agreement, and we just said, okay, let's just see how this goes. And
Mhm.
13 and a half years later, I'm still here. So things have worked out pretty well. But I think I'd also say that with a lot of caution. My approach is not one I would encourage everyone else to take.
Mm-hmm.
I had the liberty of saying I just want to do this and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't particularly worry about how much money was on offer.
Mm-hmm.
So it was okay for me. It was just okay. I wanted to work in. It became very easy for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely not, I think, the kind of. I wouldn't give the same advice to my younger self now.
Yeah. Indeed. Because right now, because I'm also working as a sports and gaming lawyer, as an independent legal practitioner, and yeah, because that if you were working as a fully sports and gaming lawyer, things will become tough because you have to be more sustainable. You have to have some. You have to. You should have a circulation of
You
money,
should have.
and that's why, because I'm working as that, it's difficult. But yeah, because the journey is so long, and that's why right now I'm also preparing for the solicitor qualification exam to qualify solicitor, because I want to expand my practice also, and that's the only way that I can generate more revenue from it. And that's the reason that you have to have other revenues also, so that you can sustain yourself if you are working fully in a sports and gaming sector right now. So I think your advice something which is really beneficial. If anyone really want to work into the sports legal sector, then you should have to think, and you have a strong back so that you can work for a longer run. Definitely, I think this is something very unique. So, yeah, while working in the law firm as a sports and gaming lawyer, and you work with the different sets of clients like athletes and sports organization, what kind of challenges that you face during in the past 10 to 12 years?
I think the first major challenge actually was to my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said, right, I wanted to work only in sport. And at one point when I was interning with someone who actually was one of the pioneers of sports law in India,
Mm-hmm.
I believe he actually worked on the player contracts for the IPL for the first season.
Yeah.
And he was representing one player at that point. And that format kind of became the format that basically has been followed to this day.
Yeah.
But even his advice was, he just said, don't be so pig-headed about this thing. I'll do work in sport. Now, I obviously was young and foolish, so I didn't really take up his advice.
Mm-hmm.
But as you work as a professional, you kind of realize that just as we in some ways probably tend to generalize certain professions,
Mm-hmm.
if I have a medical problem, I call my brother, who's a general
Mm-hmm.
practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't matter what the problem is. It could be a broken bone, it could be a sprain, it could be anything else. And I realized that, two clients. So there's one part of it where they say, okay, with these guys, I'm working with this team for specific on-field and off-field requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a second part of it where they're saying they need a lawyer and they will reach out to you whether you want it or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because A, to them, you're a lawyer, and B, they also trust you to, if not give them the answer, to find the answer or to guide
Mm-hmm.
them in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think that has been the biggest challenge. And the second, I think, is something which, so we are very uniquely placed because we have many organizations working in sport within what I'd call, I think, our ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to the law firm, there's a not-for-profit, there's a think tank, there's a company that protects IP rights in sport.
Mm-hmm.
So we get unique perspectives on pretty much, I think, the entire sports ecosystem. It's a humble brag, but I think it really adds value to the kind of work that we do
Yeah.
because you're not just looking at it purely from a commercial side or from a legal drafting side. We thought, for example, understanding the operational issues.
Mm.
A simple clause you may add in an agreement may actually have a pretty huge operational implication
Yeah.
or may just be impractical. Right. So
Yeah.
I think this helps in even then giving clients right kind of advice
Mm.
on both sides, saying, okay, if you're giving rights to a licensee to make certain particular products,
Mm.
then it's pretty fair for the licensee to come back and say, show me that your marks are registered in the first place, and
Mm.
operationally, what are you doing to protect your marks?
Yeah.
If I can find fake jerseys, for example, on e-commerce websites, are you doing enough?
Mm.
And even looking ahead, right? If, for example, one of your clients is a franchise and they want to shift bases,
Yeah.
right? What has happened in other leagues across the world, and what are the considerations?
Mm.
So even if they for example, got their franchise at a particular value,
Mm.
that doesn't necessarily mean if you shift cities or if you're given permission to shift cities, that it will be at the same value.
Mm.
There's the size of the commercial market, there's how much you can generate in terms of revenues, the stadium size,
Mm.
and stuff like that, which I think pretty unique. And you see how the different players within the sports ecosystem also interact with each other.
Yeah.
And there are some absolute basics we just have to protect, I think, irrespective of the client you're dealing with. If it's an athlete, you have to be getting very aware of what are the kind of brands you're associating with and where, you could end up in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And by trouble, I mean legal trouble. Obviously, there are the ethical and moral considerations to take, but if there's a deal put in front of you for a certain amount of money, what are you going to say no? Or if you're saying yes, do you know what the consequences are? But also, I think as lawyers, it helps to understand that many things are actually work outside of the contract, right? It's relationship based.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to just go and sue someone else for saying, you promised me 10 tickets, but you gave me only five. Right? Obviously, if the relationship is bad, then even the 10 tickets in themselves can become an issue. But if you don't gain the commercial understanding of how things work, I think it becomes very tough as a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you advise clients, I think you need to understand that you need to be a little detached from the work. Yeah. Legal negotiations can get pretty heated
Yes.
because lawyers are pretty high functioning individuals, right? And many egos come into play.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it's not your deal. You're there to facilitate rather than to actually get two parties to come at loggerheads.
Yeah.
So what you can do is whatever I think can resolve on the call, you resolve it on the call.
Mm-hmm.
And things that you can't, you just make a client understand what the risks are and what the issues at play are, and leave them to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Obviously, if something is illegal, you have to tell them outright that you
Definitely.
can't do this. I think
Yeah.
overreach is quite an issue for what people try to do through business deals.
Yeah, definitely. Because I right now I'm also working with the esports athlete, and it's a very new market, and sometimes you have to negotiate with the contract because these athletes who are playing other esports game like FIFA, Pokemon Unite, Valorant, which I think very different from the BGMI, which was earlier in the esport market, which generated a lot of revenue from it. And while working with these other esports athletes, you have to be very cautious about it while you are negotiating with the contract for these athletes if they want to join the esports organization. And I think you have to be very conscious about it. What kind of clauses that you want to put in the contract? What are the salary proportion should be, and how you have to divide the revenue if a certain team, if the athlete win the any esports event or any tournament, how the bifurcation of that prize pool will be between the esports organization and with the player. Yeah, I think these should be the things that we have to that I'm right now focusing on that. Yeah, definitely. And you already talk about it. You have to have a really good relationship with the clients, and I think that's really important to have a long run for your this legal career. So that's why it's really important for now. Yeah, coming into the esports sector, because we see right now a really huge news come in the last 2 weeks. TSM is one of the biggest esports organization in all over the world, and they recently canceled their deal with the FTX, which is one of the most second biggest crypto exchange platform. What are the impact it will make in the esports market right now? Because they were also sponsoring the ICC events. Recently, T20 World Cup happened in Australia and New Zealand, and they was one of the sponsors. So how it will uh, make an impact? Because recently we see FTX already file a bankruptcy in America. So yeah, how make the impact in the sports market?
I think as a lawyer, especially over the past 2.5 years, right, since the pandemic,
Yeah.
we've had to be very wary of where the money is coming in from
Mm-hmm.
and what are the sectors that the money is coming in from. So obviously, many of the traditional sectors, which invested in sport, took a bit of hit worldwide during the lockdowns and restrictions that were in place across the world, which obviously meant that there were others, for example, the cryptos, your Doge coins, and so many others who were coming in and just sponsoring sport.
Yeah.
And we've seen this across many different clients as well. But as I said, just going back to my previous question, I think all you can do really is just make the client understand what the risks are.
Mm.
As in, what would if you're advising a client that this sector is volatile, and even there's no one can predict what's going to happen, right, with a
Mm-hmm.
crypto or with anything else for that matter. I think that's the limit to which you can take your advice.
Yeah.
There may be ways of ensuring it through contracts where you say that bank guarantees have to be provided beforehand, and
Mm.
it's a simplistic way. But if a company goes bankrupt, what do you do?
Yeah.
I think you need to have an appetite. No, I wouldn't say appetite for it, but you need to know how much risk you have an appetite for before you enter into such deals.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the money is just too good to be true,
Yeah.
right? That in itself is a red flag.
Mm.
And I think crypto has been in the under the lens because of its relevance in recent years. But if you step back, right, in the past there have been many different products, even in
Mm.
India. For example, you had many chit funds who were for sponsoring even IPL teams,
Yeah.
right? It's so ethical considerations aside, the fact is everyone knows what kind of reputation in general is associated with
Mm-hmm.
chit funds and scams that we've had over the years. As a team or as an athlete, are you still okay with endorsing it?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, accepting support from it. At that point, also, I think you need to be mindful that this may not work for you,
Mm.
right? As in, because all you're left is you have the money that's already been paid,
Mm.
but there's an entire opportunity cost which is lost, and then it's up to you to recover whatever you can.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think in addition to esports, obviously was the big market, for many of the crypto products. There's a natural affinity, right, within these different product categories.
Yeah.
But they've also been sponsoring, for example, arenas around the US. I think the Miami Heat arena is called the FTX arena.
Yeah.
So I think the collapse of crypto is going to have worldwide implications,
Mm-hmm.
also large implications for tokens and many others.
Mm-hmm.
All of which actually rely on cryptocurrencies more than anything, right? You can buy a fan token, but you
Mm-hmm.
buy a fan token only through actually buying cryptocurrency
Mm-hmm.
in a particular on a particular website.
Mm-hmm.
And once it's in there, what do you do? It's in there.
It's in there. Yeah.
From a user perspective and also from other perspectives. I think sport has gone through a tough period. There have been these sorts of revenue which have come in and supported sport,
Mm-hmm.
but they could and they will, I think, just as easily go away.
Yeah.
I think even NFTs, it's a question now of NBA Top Shot really work, but what really has been the next big NFT product after Top Shot?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen ads, even during recent cricket events for
Mm-hmm.
certain brands, but I don't think the products are really out there.
Mm. Yeah. Right. Right.
So
And
the
yeah.
implications are, I think, are going to be much wider. And
Mm-hmm.
as a lawyer, all you can do is just watch out for the risk and advise your clients.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And yeah, because you talk about the NFTs and fan tokens, and I was come with this platform. It's called Jupiter Meta. And what they do, they based on the blockchain technology only, but what they do, they have the certain fan token NFT, and you can just buy with the Indian rupees currency. And that kind of model can be more sustainable rather than if they are
Yeah.
completely based on the cryptocurrencies, because there are a huge risk involved in such kind of platform. And recently we see that Formula One, if this Formula One motorsports team like Aston Martin, they recently launched their NFT, and they quickly got sold out frequently, I think in half an hour only. And yeah, and I think these are the things that we have to think about it, because fan tokens are the things which can give you a an alternative of the season tickets, especially right now it's happening in the England right now, in the UK, where the lot of stadium they want to have an alternative to the season tickets, and fan tokens are something which can give that
Also
kind of different
for fan engagement.
yeah, for the fan engagement, it gave a
Yeah.
very different kind of experience. And it's completely true that such models can be more sustainable if we look out at what are the repercussions can be if the cryptocurrencies are involved in such platform. But if it's going through the local currency, that can be more sustainable into the future.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it can become
Yeah.
the better alternative, rather than working on just focusing on the cryptocurrencies, because we see that how volatile can be a crypto market can be, because it's highly risk, highly volatile. And that's why people have to think about it once again at how you have to manage such kind of where there are huge risk and huge rewards. Yeah, definitely.
And I think even with NFTs, what you see is increasingly, just so much of a fragmentation of what is actually on offer, right? Ideally,
Yes.
you should have governing body, team, players, everyone coming together and
Yeah.
making like one offering.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the value is. That's what the NBA has done really well. I think players have been involved.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if players make individual NFTs, then but what are they really offering as the NFT? Right? They don't own any footage from matches or anything else.
Mm. Right.
Even,
Right.
and it's the same with the teams. If you were to take an IPL franchise, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
they don't own any of the match footage.
Yeah.
It's all the property of the intellectual property of the BCCI.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can the BCCI just go out and monetize all their content on their own? I think they'll have to reopen all their player contracts in the past and say what are the rights that have been granted and
Yeah.
are they allowed to commercialize it in perpetuity? Because after the match is done, the value of the footage really is negligible,
Yeah, definitely.
right?
Because yeah, because there's a two thing, the player capacity and the club and organization capacity. And while the endorsement deal, we have to think these are two aspects we have to look about it, how they want to monetize and how they want to exploit such kind of sponsorship deal. And that's why the revenue are generated from these platforms. And that's why you're talking about it right now, that all the footages are owned by the BCCI right now. Right.
Yeah,
So
but it works only if I think players are also on board. So, there's only one unique piece of, say, an NFT
mhm, mhm,
or one type of NFT which has 100 licensed copies which are on sale.
mhm. Right. And many of the
I
football.
think it's a huge market. I think India is going to be a huge market for NFTs, provided everyone, comes together and is on the
Yeah.
same page.
Mhm.
Players will have to be compensated, teams will have to be compensated.
Yeah.
Because while the platform is the IPL, it's based on, the team selecting the players and the players then performing on field, right? That entire moment has so many other aspects to it.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's also all the sponsor logos, for instance, which are on the jerseys and
Yeah. Yeah,
on,
definitely.
on the ground, on the jerseys.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think a platform like Jupiter Meta, the model that they are following right now, I think that can be more sustainable rather than working solely on the cryptocurrencies, because working in such a volatile markets, it's really tough to negotiate a deal with the whether it's an organization or with the player, and that's why it's really important to clarify the clients also that look, these are the things that can be come on board, but there's a huge risk involved with. And once they any of the company they got into the bankruptcy, and these are the repercussions can be. So we have to make it clear right now, and I think government also need to think about it, that how they want to operate such kind of crypto market. And I think recently they are talking about it, that they and RBI is also recently going to launch their um, platform. Okay, so
Digital Rupee.
yeah, Digital Rupee. Let's start. Let's move on to the next question. Because recently you see that there's a sports governing issues happening in India. Because recently we see how in the AIFF happened, and the problem with the election issue and to the constitution, and they went to the Supreme Court, and the FIFA suspended the AIFF for the certain period of time. And we also see how in the BCCI also the BCCI went to the court to get rid of that cooling off period from the constitution, which was recommended by the Lodha committee in 2015. So yeah, what I think, and recently we also see that Indian Olympic Association is also going through such sports governing issues. What are your views on that?
I think I would honestly recommend that everyone watch FIFA Uncovered on Netflix.
Yeah.
If you want to understand what happens in sports governance in some way, shape, or form, pretty much around the world,
Hmm.
the issues are the same, irrespective of the level at which the organization operates.
Hmm.
And what they're most resistant to very often seems to be accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
And this comes up in various forms as well,
Mm.
right? But I think a lot of governing bodies have, for example, been traditionally headed by politicians, bureaucrats,
Yeah.
businessmen, things like that. Now, I think for each of them in their particular profession or in their particular role as politicians, bureaucrats, or businessmen, there is some amount of accountability, right? You
Mm.
won't, for example, remain a CEO of a company if you're not producing the results. But equally, you can be president of any of the sports federations without, with the sport going nowhere in your country, and in
Mm.
some instances even going backward.
Hmm.
And that I think is an issue in itself, because that also means that you're, by being in a particular role for a particular period of time,
Mm,
you're also perpetuating certain behaviors or saying a few things are okay and few things are not.
mm,
And I personally don't see why there should be an issue with being accountable or being transparent with the way that organizations function.
mhm,
It obviously came up, even with the BCCI and the entire Lodha committee report. And I
mhm.
think the reforms that were initially suggested were quite, would have just altered Indian sports governance, I think, altogether.
Yeah,
But the fact is, even the draft, the National Sports Code has been around since 2011.
yeah.
So it's not like any of these are newer concepts, and it's just the fact that if you're at the receiving end, that you would say yes, I will challenge this against what the constitution of my international federation says, and the federation
Mm,
gets involved.
yeah.
But you look at the FIFA or even an IOC, and it's not like they've exactly acted in been very transparent or acted in good faith throughout.
Mm.
Right, with the
Oh,
arrest of I think the FIFA executive committee members for corruption and other related charges.
yeah,
And if you look at that, if you look at even the tenure of FIFA presidents, it's been, I think, last 30, 40 years, there have been like three presidents.
yeah,
But yeah, you can go back to like maybe 55 or 60 years, and there have been all of three presidents.
yeah.
And there's
Definitely.
so much prestige that comes with these positions, right? You're always in the public eye.
Yeah.
Qatar and, for example, Qatar and Saudi Arabia there's been an economic blockade of Qatar in the Gulf and Middle East.
Yeah.
But Gianni Infantino managed to get the Emir of Qatar and Mohammed bin Salman on the same platform
Mm,
for the inauguration.
yeah.
He probably thinks he should have a Nobel Peace Prize for that or something of that sort. But it's almost a head of state status that's accorded, right, to many of these
Yeah.
head of state or even equivalent. You're seen as the head of a particular body in India or worldwide or in a particular region.
Mm,
And once I think you're used to the power, you will do whatever you can to keep it.
yeah.
I think sports governance, in some sense, has not. This has to evolve where the the sport and the athlete are at the center of it,
Mm,
and not individual, administrators or business interests. And you see it in other forms as well, right? You see the role where governing bodies, for example, say that anyone contracted to us, players
mm,
especially, can't play in any league which is not approved.
yeah.
At the same time, the only approved league is their own league.
Mm,
And this is, I think, this combined with then certain commercial interests is what creates issues like the European Super League or,
mm,
just breakaway leagues in general, where you feel that the way things are done is not the right way and there's more to be achieved by doing it in another way.
mm. Right.
And historically, even sports courts have stayed out of sports, saying there's a principle of specificity of sport and we won't get involved in purely sporting matters.
Mm,
But I think the big challenge to sports governance is competition law. I don't think anyone ever expected that.
mm,
But I think it's a very good thing that's happened, because increasingly sports actions of sports governing bodies have economic consequences. And if you don't find the balance, you just say everything is a matter of sport and you can't. No one coach should not get involved.
mhm.
Then where is when there are no internal checks and balances? Where are the checks and balances coming from otherwise?
Right.
You can't expect them really to self-regulate.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
long way to go, but and I think you've seen different approaches even from the global governing bodies. Right? The ICC did
Mm,
not really get involved when the BCCI was fighting the Supreme Court and the Lodha Committee.
mm,
But equally, you saw FIFA just suspending AIFF without a care in the world, and
mm. Right.
also shows, I think, India's position within these sports
Yeah.
and how important it is
Mm. Because
in terms of the overall scale.
yeah, right, right. And the main because when the FIFA announced that the suspension on the AIF, many of the esports athlete, they come in touch with him because they want to know that whether they will be able to play the international tournament which were happening in the Europe at that time. And during that time only, FIFA suspended the AIFF at that time, and the things went
Yeah.
into the court, and that's the issue. There should be a more clarity in regards to that also, because there are the numerous avenues also where sports organization also have the this esports tournament also, and that's why we have more clarity on that. And yeah,
And
because
that's the issue. As I said, I think the sport and the athletes are the ones to suffer.
yeah,
It's no one else.
mm, ultimately
If you
they
take
are
away the
the
platform to compete,
mm,
then you're defeating the entire purpose
mhm.
in the first place.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah. And that's why sports governance should get evolved time to time. And that's the only way that sports can be more sustainable, and there can more new changes that come on board. And that's why we have to look at how it will get evolved in the future. Yeah. Coming to the next question, you see, you are quite associated with the sports law and policy center, and recently Nandan Kamat, they recently launched the Sports and Society Accelerator for the legal sport industry. How it will really help in the Indian sports legal sector, because these are the organization, and also GoSports Foundation, which is also working from the, I think, for the last 10 years also. How these are the one of the most important things which should be implemented in all over the India, because your firm is quite involved in such kind of activity where you are quite focused on promoting sports and legal matters also, that how we have to teach our athletes and how through this. And also I recently met with you in the symposium also, and we recently talk about it, how it's really important that such events should be conducted all over India, because that's the only way that the young lawyers like us get to know how the things will work in the future. So yeah, your views on that.
No, firstly, I think I'm very glad you enjoyed the symposium. It was great for us as well because we hadn't conducted it in person for 3 years.
Yeah.
2020 and 2021, we had it online.
Mm.
And also, I think it gave us a chance to just relook at the way that the symposium worked and see if a slight tweak in format would
Mm.
have the same level of interest.
Mm.
I think what we want is essentially is ensuring that even knowledge about sports law and policy is more easily accessible.
Mm.
And secondly, that people understand the context, right? Instead of I think looking at law and policy issues as just law and policy issues, because
Yeah.
as we are taught even in our universities and colleges, the law doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Mm.
It comes across as a result of so many other societal issues and interlinkages
Mm.
that you can't now just say sports law and policy should be seen only from one lens and not something else.
Mm.
So, and there's so many questions to answer. Right? I think future of cricket and, for example, the way that broadcasting technology has evolved
Mm.
is the reason that IPL digital rights have gone for 25,000 crore now.
Yeah.
And I think those were the type of perspectives we wanted to bring out at the symposium. We even looked at sports of the future, where we had a demonstration of breakdancing, or what is officially known as breaking,
Yeah.
and makes you think of whether you really need the current amount of infrastructure
Mm.
to actually play conventional sports, or can that be better used for sports of the future,
Yeah.
right? Where things are more in a limited space of land or more vertical, for example, climbing. And so we wanted to, I think, put out those kind of issues. The big one, I think, for sport is just, especially since we are in India, is the climate crisis.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, it's actually raining in Bangalore. I think this year it's rained every month.
Yeah.
And this is okay, it's fine, it brings out the temperature, but there's so many other consequences, right?
Yeah.
It's not ideal. It means you basically have to prepare for rain at any given point of time. It rained on
Mm.
the day of our symposium.
Yeah.
Luckily, I
Yeah.
think because we lived in Bangalore for so long, when my colleague Nihal and I went to the venue the week before,
Mm.
and we were talking to our caterer, and we just said, okay, let's check the weather for next week.
Mm.
And there was actually a thunderstorm predicted,
Yeah.
which is very unusual for that time of the year.
Mm.
But that's just one aspect to it. Right? There's from a sports perspective, you need to look out. I think obviously such weather causes a lot of damage to sports infrastructure itself.
Mm.
So
Right.
earlier, if for example there was a stadium and you said, okay, there's just 4 months of rain, we can figure out what to do. No, now it's going to rain 11 months a year, 12 months a year.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Are you prepared to deal with it?
Mm.
And as the days I think get warmer and warmer or colder and colder, your window to actually conduct a sports event gets restricted.
Yeah.
Because not only from a player wellness perspective, because obviously, I think last year there were protests when the I League was played at 3 p.m. in Kolkata in summer.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, what about the players? Right? It's
It's
not
insane.
about, I think, just conducting sports properties, but taking everyone along as you go,
Mm.
because they're a part of your success.
Right.
And now, if it gets too cold, will fans really turn up in stadiums where the infrastructure is very basic at best?
Mm,
I think what you've seen is stadiums abroad. Fans can come in with blankets and
yeah.
literally
Mm,
do whatever they can to make themselves comfortable. We don't have that kind of setup. So then, what else do we do to make fans comfortable? I think we even struggle to provide basic drinking water.
yeah.
We need to I think, coach to get involved to say, yes, please provide them drinking water for
Mm,
free.
yeah. Right.
And it's going to get worse and worse. It's not. There's going to be heat waves on one side. There's going to be, I think, incredible downpours and deluges on the other.
Mm,
Winters are, I think, going to get much colder.
mm,
I think everything aside, even if you're thinking just from a perspective of sports commercial model,
mm,
does it mean you actually don't want fans at the stadium anymore and everyone just watches it right from the comforts of their home, because that makes more sense, right?
yeah. Right.
And what's in it for the players? I think we've seen movements in Australia, for instance, where the cricketers have come together.
Mm,
This is going to be one of those sports which is going to get hit quite badly by climate crisis.
yeah.
But there are others which we may not even think of. What about winter sports?
Mm, right.
Or does everyone just start swimming? I'm saying it in a lighter vein, but the fact that there's rising levels of seawater also mean that many countries will just go underwater.
Yeah.
So I think part of what we're trying to do through the symposium, through our centers, through even the accelerator, is just have discussions on topics which are contemporary, but which Indian sport will have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So even through the accelerator, we do organize discussions once every 2 or 3 months. They're called the Sports and Society Dialogues,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been very lucky to get very high caliber speakers and moderators for these sessions.
Yeah.
So you covered topics this year such as sports washing. We looked at transgender athletes in sport.
Mm,
We've looked at the Cricket South Africa's investigation into systemic racism,
mm, right. Yeah.
because I think we also have a sense that some issues are not relevant to India,
Yeah.
which is really not the case.
Mm. Because we also have that international aspects also, because if such things happen in India, how we can have to deal with it, how our
Exactly.
approach would be in such kind of issues. Because recently we saw in the IPL also that in 2008, when the first IPL edition happened, and there's an assault happened between the Srishant and the Harbhajan Singh, and this is the first
Harbhajan,
time
yeah.
happened. Yeah, it was the first kind of experience that we have to saw that two World Cup winners, they are fighting within each other during after just after the match. And yeah, and it's a very famous footage if anyone want to saw that when Shishan was to play with the Kings 11 Punjab at that time. So yeah, and as well as you talking about the climate crisis also, because I also used to play sport. I used to play cricket right here in Kanpur, and this is one experience that I had in 2010. We had a really, in winter usually the ball used to swing in this much, but right now in recent past, when you see the climate crisis, the temperature is up rising, and as well it is very difficult to play in winter season, especially in the northern belt of India, because we had a problem of
Correct.
pollution. Smoke comes into the gameplay, and that's why recently in Delhi also they were trying to
It's
reschedule
the
it.
India Sri Lanka test.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
want to they want to reschedule it in some other time, or they want another venue so that the match could be conducted. And as you already talk about that in Bangalore, because I went to the Bangalore 2 times, and yeah, it's rained really badly in there. And such climate crisis is really important. You have to think about it, how we have to evolve our sports also, because if you see different areas, and in India, the stadium structure that we have right now, it's not up to the mark. Because in Australia we saw they had a cover shed stadium, which are recently they had some matches, especially in football and cricket also in their domestic seasons. And whether India is ready for that, we don't know. We don't have an answer for that. Yeah, so that's why we
Correct.
have.
And I think part of this, a legal profession also just being aware of issues just outside, I think, the commercial context of sport.
Yeah,
It's and it's a profession that allows you to, read as much as you want to and,
yeah.
analyze as much as you want to. So I think you should just make use of that opportunity. And
Hmm. Right. You have to think about it. Yeah. So yeah, next question. Because I couldn't ask this question earlier. what are the skills which are required to work into the sports legal industry? If you're talking about it, that if anyone want to work in the as a sports and gaming lawyer as a fully, because we earlier talk about it, what are the skills that are necessary for to work in such sector?
I think the primary skill is actually just to be focused on being a good lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
a good commercial lawyer, I would say.
Mm.
Because a lot of the work that we do ends up being commercial and advisory transactions, that
Yeah.
kind of work. Very little on the dispute side. So whatever I think area of, obviously you can specialize. Right? You can be a disputes lawyer, you can be a commercial lawyer,
Mm.
but focusing I think on being a generalist with an interest in sport as opposed to making the mistake that I did say. I just want to work in sport, and that's the only kind of work I want to do.
Mm.
But obviously, you also need research, writing, the basic skills of just becoming, I think, a good commercial lawyer. Research,
Right.
writing, communication,
Mm.
understanding, I think, and having awareness and understanding of just the sports ecosystem in general,
Mm.
which is something you would do in, I think, which something that lawyers probably need to do in any field of work that they're in.
Mm.
Understanding if you're negotiating a contract, trying to figure out what is the end game.
Yeah.
What is it that is sought to be achieved? Instead of just
Right.
saying this is the way the agreement is the way it has to be because it's a good legal clause.
Yeah.
Right? It's what are the gives and what are the different pulls for each of the parties? What are the
Yeah.
interests? What will they be happy to settle for? And
Definitely.
not making it about yourself, I think is definitely most important
Yeah.
because it also works in two ways, right? If you give a client advice and he or she doesn't take it, or the organization doesn't take it,
Mm-hmm.
and you shouldn't say, okay, it's a personal slight. They don't respect the advice I'm giving them. It's not.
Mm.
Maybe you haven't been able to understand their perspective completely,
Yeah.
or they have understood it and they think that this is the decision we want to take from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Because the Excel documents always favored more than Word documents are.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think giving yourself time to grow as an individual.
Yeah.
In the first time you read a franchise agreement, you may not necessarily understand it. Doesn't mean you stop reading it either,
Mm.
right? You probably have to read it 5 or 6 times.
Mm.
But once the basics seep in, it becomes much easier to see things in perspective. And
Right. Yeah, and yeah, that's really important because when I was pursuing my LLM, also I was just harnessing the skill, reading the books, writing the articles which are correlated to into the recent uh, crisis which is happening in sports, and that's the only way that you can evolve as a lawyer. And you have to also have that commercial awareness. Also, there's a sports law awareness that you should always have it by reading the sports news and following the certain articles, but you also have to develop the commercial awareness. And that's why it's really important to whenever we as a lawyer advise to our client, we have to tell them everything about it. And even if they have their such personal interest also, you also have to make sure that they are aware of the what kind of repercussions can be. And that's why as a lawyer they should that you should work thoroughly on that, having a deeper research into it, harness the scale. Every day you have to read it. And yeah, because as a lawyer, every day what I do every morning for half an hour, I listen a podcast on any of the sports, or I just following one that, and I make a social media post either on the Instagram or in the LinkedIn. I used to post that, and that's the only way that you have to evolve it, and it becomes habit for me. And at the end of the day, I will be reading one of these books which I having right now, or I will be reading something else. So that's the only way that you can evolve as a lawyer.
what are you reading right now?
Right now, I am reading a book written by Neel Shah, "Awakening of Blue Tigers." It's a really book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really.
Uh,
I already finished 110 pages, and I think 100 pages are left, and I will complete it within this week. So yeah, these are the way that I'm right now reading on that. And it really helped me out that how the Indian football ecosystem can be evolved in the next 20 years if we want to play the FIFA World Cup, which we will talk about in our next topic. So yeah, and that's why if especially which I'm talking about the how Indian football can involve, because right now the recent things which are required in the Indian football circuit: 20 world class stadium, hundreds of turf pitches, and a really good grassroots program in football, which is really really important, and that is the only way the talent pool come from. Because right now, if you see other sports also like athletics, of esports also, you see majority of the talent pool are coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and we still don't know what are the tier 3 cities because they are the very remote area of India. And that's the only way sports like us and even the sports agents also which we are working with, that we also have to make sure that those people also getting the accessibility, whether they want to get the legal representation or they want the any sports agency which can involve with the in terms of getting the sponsors or anything which are required as a sports person. So that's a very longer vision that we should have for the next 20-30 years if we want to dominate into the sports sector.
And I think there's some sports we're doing well in.
Yeah.
Some sports where I think performance keeps going up and down, like the hockey, for instance.
Hockey,
But
weightlifting.
also, I think periodic reviews just have to be undertaken of why things are working, why they're not.
Mm,
I think Australia is one example of a country which actually undertakes very good periodic reviews. I know it's a completely different scale at which they operate,
yeah. Yeah.
and there obviously there's a culture of doing well in sport. And I think that's the larger question, and the question we're trying to, I think, not address, but I think contribute through the Sport and Society Accelerator,
Mm-hmm.
where you also look at sport not just as sport, but as part of what is essentially physical literacy, right?
Yeah.
You need your entire population to not just play, but maybe just participate in physical activities.
Yeah.
Because that has just longer term benefits to the health of the nation in general.
Yeah.
And sport, I think, is one aspect of it which helps to achieve that goal. But that's not the end goal in itself.
Mm,
I think
right.
people need to perhaps make some amount of physical activity a day just part of their life. We
Mm,
may perhaps see, but that's a bigger challenge, right? As our population grows,
yeah.
like where is the space, and then how do people get the minimum physical activity? People will start living much further away from work.
Yeah.
There is travel time involved. You perhaps have to battle nature on your way in and back from work.
Mm, and
And all
that.
these issues, I think, are just linked. Like it's not. For example, you can't go for a jog if the payments outside your house or payments are in your area are not late. Like where are you going to run on the road?
Yeah.
There's like much other many different risks at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why and you already talk about it in the regional basis also, in the low ground also. We don't have the accessibility of the public park also, because what we see, we have the so many hospitals, but does we have the public parks or playgrounds where small children and even the people like us who want to play a casual sports on a regular basis, whether we getting or not. And that's the one of the, I think at the lower level, that's one of the major issue, that we don't have the accessibility of the public plaza or the playground where we can play beloved sports, or we don't have accessibility even getting a futsal ground, because in Kanpur we don't have any futsal ground right now. We already have only a open ground in my near area where I'm living right now. So yeah, we have to think about it, how we have to evolve our sports also.
Even within a smaller community, right? You see the benefits. For example, if there's an area or a locality with a park, for instance,
Hmm.
you see how many people actually end up using it. Using it to socialize, for
Right.
physical activity throughout the day.
Yeah.
So it's not even like people are not using these opportunities that are given. So I think if we don't invest in these spaces, obviously the number of hospitals is going to go up, right?
Yes,
It's
definitely.
almost directly
Correlation of,
related.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Medical and
because
sports.
if the health doesn't improve, then obviously the health doesn't improve. There are consequences to having bad health,
Yeah, absolutely. I
which
completely
overall
agree.
this adds so much in a country like ours. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. Yeah. So yeah, moving on to the next question. If you want to add something, please go ahead if you want to.
No, no, good. No.
Yeah. All right. So next
I'm sure
question is,
the other topics will come up.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, the next question is, this year the FIFA World Cup is happening in the Qatar, and we see the performance which is happening by these smaller teams, especially from the Asia, Saudi Arabia, and Japan. Yesterday we saw that match, and apart from that, we already saw that human rights violation also happened in the which is conducted by the government of Qatar, and what we can learn with such kind of event, because India is also trying to bid for the Olympics as well as for the FIFA World Cup, I think after 2030, because they are planning to. So what we have to learn from such kind of events if we want to hold such kind of major sporting events, because these are the very global events. It's not like Commonwealth Games which happened in 2010. So what are things that we have to learn from such kind of events?
I think the first question to ask really is whether we want to organize such events.
Hmm.
And I think what you'll also see increasingly is a level of interest from even the established, sporting superpowers across the world.
Yeah.
Just a reduction, I think, in the level of interest to host these large sporting events.
Hmm.
I still feel the Football World Cup will have takers, but as you're seeing, you actually have many countries now coming together to form bids.
Yeah.
Canada, US, Mexico. That's probably the way to do it.
Yeah.
It's and we've seen even the Cricket World Cup being held across different places across the subcontinent, right, in the
Hmm.
past. The Olympic Games, I think, just ask for a lot more infrastructure to be invested in.
Yeah.
And my personal take is if we don't have it, then there are probably better uses to that money
Hmm.
than just building very costly infrastructure, which then no one really knows how to use. And I'll give you an example. You spoke about the Commonwealth Games,
Yeah.
which I think happened September 2010,
Yeah.
August, September
Yeah.
2010.
September, October. Yeah.
Uh, I think I remember going to the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Talkatora for Baichung Bhutia's testimonial match.
Okay.
So I actually went from Bangalore just to watch Baichung Bhutia play once in my life. And India were playing Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
So that was in Delhi. Obviously, it was Delhi winter, but I still made the trip and I went. And this was, I think, this is a few months after, couldn't have been more than a year after the Commonwealth Games.
Hmm.
And it looked like no one had cleaned the stadium for that 1 year.
Yeah.
It's not just a question of building stuff, right? After you build it, there has to be a legacy plan for how you're going to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just there. It becomes a white elephant. So what is the point of having built it just for one event?
Hmm.
Are you better off investing that in building, smaller stadiums, as you said, across the tier 2 and tier 3 cities where there is just so much talent which just wants a platform to show how well it can do.
Hmm. Right. Right.
And obviously, there are other costs as well. And can that money in general be put to better use? In terms of in a country like ours where we're also struggling with basics for our citizens
Yeah.
in terms of just roads and drainage in Bangalore, for instance, right? We've
Yeah.
had 2, 3 instances of flooding this year, and the money necessarily have to be put into sport.
Hmm.
Elite sport is my
Okay.
is my question.
Hmm.
But we also seen at the same time, I think, private investment in sport going up. In Bangalore itself, we have the Padukone Dravid Center for Sports Excellence,
Yeah.
which is quite a unique initiative
Hmm.
and which has facilities for people to use as well to play.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because you say right now that if we want to bid for such a major events in the future, the first thing we have to focus in building an infrastructure, having a really great sporting grassroots level, so that our talents can have they have a basics necessity can be fulfilled, whether there's diet, their medical expenses also, which because there are two aspects which is really important for any athlete who want to pursue their dream to for their particular sport. Because you see right now what happened once they win a medal for our country, they are working into the sports any sports government jobs, or they are preparing for the next sporting event. And that's the one of the major issues right now, that sports athletes who perform really well in the past, but they are not getting that kind of um, uh, after retirement plans, which I think we are not fully focused on that after, except from the cricket, because cricket it already got so much commercialized from the 1990s once the broadcasting deal come into the picture.
And I think, as I said, just going back to my initial point, right, and sports governance, where it has to be focused around sport and the athlete.
Yeah.
And I think the athlete, when the athlete comes in, the athlete needs to perhaps get a safety net
Mm-hmm.
where the essentially it's the the job of the governance structure to say, okay, once you're in, we will support you in any way possible. And it's not just commercial support. You need a safe environment for athletes to play in as well.
Right.
If there are minors involved, if there are girls, if there are women, I think they need to feel confident enough that they'll be treated well and protected in the first place.
Okay.
Instead of just being left to fight, not just their own personal battle, but also the federation and administrators and coaches and others.
Yeah.
And prepare them for life after the sport as well. Not everyone is going to make it.
Yeah.
Even if you were to take the individual sports or cricket, for instance,
Yeah.
even the team sports, right? People are fighting for their own position.
Yeah.
Why do you see players, for example, are versatile, who can play on the wings or who can play wing back? There's a reason to that, right? They
Yeah.
want to be seen as someone who's adaptable enough to get into the squad.
Yeah.
You see central midfielders, as they aging, perhaps dropping back as holding midfielders, or even becoming central defenders at some point of time.
Yeah. We
The
saw
fact
that.
is, an athlete is, I think, tuned to, and obviously has to think for themselves.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily greed, right? It is the nature of sport, of competitive sport.
Right. So yeah, I think that was the last question. Yeah. So thank you so much, Roshan, for coming on board for this episode and restarting the second season. So yeah. So thank you so much for coming on board. Any last few words you want to put on it?
I think I had fun. I hope you had as much fun with the interview, and I wish your season every success.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening to the end of this episode. If you really like our episode, make sure that you like and subscribe our channel. Also, you can find me and Sports Sausage on social media platform. I'll put the link down below for a Linktree link so that you can go and check us out. And if you want to know what are things that I'm doing, so just follow me on the Instagram. So it's a TK Sports Lawyer. So just find me as well as on Twitter and Instagram. So yeah, we'll meet you in our next episode. Until then, goodbye everyone.